Matters of Influence podcast, creating awareness and alignment today to become your best self tomorrow. With your hosts, Debbie Frack and Terry Foster Nowlin.
Hello, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year is right. First podcast of the year, Debbie, and we are going to open it with an author. We're going to interview Miss Alyce Dailey. We're so excited to have her here with us, and she is the author of a newly released book, Magic Mom, and we're going to dive into that a little bit. And, you know, I first want to say not all of our listeners are moms or females even, right? And, you know, I know from talking to Alyce, one of her passions is this is about parenting even, right? These are parenting skills, if we want to call them skills, that we want to talk a little bit about today. So no matter who you are that's listening, I want you to be able to walk away with a concept or a skill or a perspective that maybe you didn't have before. Right.
Well, and I just want to say, let's make magic happen. Okay.
Ooh.
On this particular podcast, because it's the beginning of a new year and I couldn't think of anybody better to have other than the magical Alyce.
Yes. Okay.
You guys are the cutest. I'm so glad to be here with both of you. Like, what a treat. This is so fun.
Yes.
Okay, so Alyce, I want you just to do, we do this with everyone we introduce, do a little bullet point about yourself versus us talking about you. I think it's important for you to say, here's my life and here's what's important to us about it that got us here.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Yeah. So after 16 years of being in day-to-day residential real estate sales, I burned out. You know, I hit that wall of like, how did I get here? Kind of a little groundhog that burrows and just working. And I popped my head up one day and it was like, I got here. I don't know if I don't like where I am. This isn't what I thought life would be. You know, I think we all have those wake up moments one day of, is this really what I want my life to be about? And not that any of it was bad, because it was actually the contrary. It was all really good. I mean, we had a great house and great kids and a great career and we could travel. And I felt like it was wrong for me to even think that I wanted something different, because by all standards, it was all really good.
Yeah. And
yet good is the enemy of great. And I knew for myself on the inside, there was something different and there was something more, and that there was a purpose beyond what I had yet done. And I couldn't ignore it anymore. And looking back, it was probably 4 or 5 years prior to that I knew, but I ignored it.
Yeah.
And yet the pain became so great that I could no longer ignore it. So I went on this little journey of, okay, what do I really want my life to be about? And I think for all of us, we find that our genius and our purpose is so close to us that we can't see it, right? It's like right here.
Totally
agree.
agree.
It doesn't feel special because to us, it's like breathing.
Mm-hmm.
So the question that I got curious about was, and the question I would pose to anybody listening right now is, what's the question that people ask you the most that you don't even think about the answer to? Like you just like can word vomit without even, you know, like you're in just this unconscious confidence space, but people ask you about it all the time. And when I started thinking about this question, I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't think people ask me anything I don't think people ask me a question repeatedly. Yes, they do. We all have something that people come to us for that is so natural to us. And so the question that kept coming up was, how have you guys raised 4 girls that are curious and kind and entrepreneurial and adventurous and well-spoken? And I'm like, oh, I could talk about that all day long. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, there's something there. And that's where the book was born. So the Magic Mom, 5 principles to raise entrepreneurial kids. Like that's where the whole thing came from. And MAGIC being an acronym for model, affirm, grace, inquire, and coach. And realize that everything that we've done in parenting actually lies right there in those 5 words.
Love that. I can really resonate with what you said about that real purpose, right? Because I think it's one that we all struggle with in answering the question, why am I here? What is it that I want to be known for? However you ask yourself those questions, what makes me unique? What gift is it that I have to give to the world? It is right there all the time. And yet we don't think it's anything special. And so I can really resonate with that. And I love the fact that I want to just acknowledge the courage that it takes to step into that purpose.
Yeah.
Because there's a vulnerability, I believe, when you do step into that,
Yeah.
because that the little self-doubt in your head can just go, who am I? To speak on this. And yet it really is what your purpose were. And it's been placed there way before we even start recognizing it. And I love the way you described it. It got so painful that you had to step into it. It was just no choice anymore for you. So
Yeah.
I can really relate to that. And I'm sure that others listening can relate to that.
Yes.
And because we all have it. It's
And
just a
when we
matter of
step
really.
into it, the beautiful part about it is that you give other people permission,
Mm,
right?
so
So
true.
it feels selfish initially to go step into your own purpose.
Yeah.
But when you reframe that to, well, wait, who else is waiting for me to do this because they need permission?
Love it. Love that perspective, Alyce. Really do.
Yeah.
So cool. So cool. And I love that magic is the acronym. And when I first saw the title of your book, and I was just like, okay, cool. And I got to tell you, it's like when I looked at the acronym, I was like, oh, this is a little bit different than I thought it was
Mhm.
going to be, because I saw the word entrepreneurial, and I immediately thought, oh, she's teaching kids to own their own business. No. and you talk about that in the book, actually, about what entrepreneurial really kind of the definition that you want to. I'd love for you to share that.
Yeah,
If
because
if
I
you
think
would.
when we hear the word entrepreneurial, we think, okay, well, I need to own my own business, or my kid's going to start the next Google or something like that. But the reality is that moms are the most entrepreneurial beings on the planet, because entrepreneurship is about taking any risk
Yes.
and taking initiative. I don't know anything that requires more risk taking and initiative than becoming a mother.
Very true.
To have this baby, good luck, right? There's the rule book that tells you what to do and how to win. It doesn't exist, and every child is different. And one of the cool things about the book is it kind of evolved, and as it's come out into the world, is realizing moms and dads will pick up the book because it's like, oh, here's how I can help my kid.
Yes.
And what it actually is, it's a personal growth book self-disguised as a parenting book. Because as parents, we will do anything for our kids. Yet the reality is the best thing we can do for our kids is look in the mirror. Right? So the M is modeling. And I start off the epigraph of the book. One of the quotes is from Carl Jung, which has really transformed my life. And what he says is that the greatest burden on a child is the unlived life of a parent.
Oh, yes.
And the question that I ask moms is, hey, when you look at your own life and childhood, and when you look at your mom, would you say that would you have described your mom as happy? And I'll tell you, 99% of people that I ask that question to, they're like, oh yeah, no, my mom, I wouldn't. Happy is not the word that I would equate with mom.
Yeah.
Mom did what mom needed to do for the family to work.
Sure. Yeah.
Martyrdom is more what we see from moms.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that's what your mom was, how would your kids describe you? Would your kids use the word happy when they look at your life? That's a sobering question, right? Would my kids describe me as happy? Because I don't know a mom that wouldn't be willing to die for their kids.
Sure.
But would you be willing to fully live for them?
Ooh,
wow.
That's a better question.
Okay, let's take that one in.
Yeah.
Okay. So true. So true, Alyce.
And what does fully living actually mean? Do we
Yeah.
even know what it means? Right? For us, when I started getting this space, I'm like, you know what? We don't live where we want to live. we've kind of made it work. We were living in Baltimore and it was where my family was, and we built a really great business. And
Yeah.
when I looked at it, I'm like, I feel like I'm dying on the inside.
Mhm.
There's no judgment around
Right.
the city, the town, our friends, because they were
Right.
all good.
Yeah.
But yet in me, there was something that's like, I've always wanted to live in the South. I've always wanted warm weather year round.
You got
Me
it.
too. Amen.
Well, kinda. Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
like part of our journey was, you know what? We're going to move to Texas. It makes sense to a lot of people,
Sure.
but it
Sure.
meant fully living for me.
Yeah.
And the kids got to watch that. And I got to say, you know what? We're going to go give this a try as a family. And if we do this for a year and it doesn't work and we move back, I would rather that we have tried it and failed
Mhm.
than never tried at all. Because I think a lot of moms are like, well, I'll wait till the kids are older,
Sure.
they're out of the
Yeah.
house, and
Yeah.
then I'll go live.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Which
But by the
is,
time,
yeah,
when that
absolutely.
point comes,
Yeah.
you've got, you're way older. You're
Mhm.
more set in your kind of your patterns and your ways. It's harder to make some of those adjustments.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
something never comes.
Yeah.
You need to live, part, your A, which is affirm, right? In the acronym, affirming, we tend to think means, affirming others, and it's not. It's about, how does it enable you, your subconscious, to help me find the answers? And by modeling and living, I'm going to use your words, living in front of your children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting for this is huge for me to hear this myself, because
Absolutely.
I would say our generation waited to live until the nest was empty.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And they didn't learn from us by us doing that.
No.
Right.
I
They
would-
learned.
Yeah.
We didn't do bad, but they didn't learn what living really was. I know mine didn't. I will speak until they were like 16, 17 years old, when I was forced to go, okay, life could be short and they need to spend time with their father,
Absolutely.
right? In special, in experiences. And I waited for 16 years to do that. You didn't do that, Alyce. And part of affirmation is what you're doing that gives back to your own subconscious. So
Absolutely.
I was looking at that last night going, all of these have to do with us. They have nothing to do with what we do good as a skill for parenting for our children.
Or even, honestly, even the title, the job title, mom, right? So I think about that. It's, I totally get where Terry's coming from, and so agree. I remember a time when I was a single mom of two boys, raised them. They're both gone now, right? And I struggled for a year and a half to figure out what do I do now?
Yeah.
Like I had no, like, well, they were my why, because I got up every day to provide for them, to make sure. And yes, there were some amazing things that I was able to do as a single mom. And one of those is I get to see both of my boys living in their passion today. Okay.
Mhm.
And I broke some of the cycles that had plagued, like, my son graduated with a PhD, for example, right? And I was the first one in my whole family to even graduate from college. So I got to see a lot of those good things, but I remember the pain of that. I didn't even know who I was as an individual. I was like, my role was mom.
Yeah.
Now what do I do? So
Yeah.
totally, I just so appreciate that, of how it's looking in the mirror and it's being willing to live. And I love giving them the lesson of failure here, that, hey, if it doesn't work out, because the way that so many, and now I'm almost reliving this whole thing through my grandchildren. I think Terry can
Yeah.
probably relate to that, right? It's like, now it's like, I want my grandkids to see what failure looks like.
Yes.
I
Because
also
you
want
can
them,
do that in a safe environment now.
absolutely,
Because
yes,
it's not there. It's not that it's not going to happen. It's a
right,
matter of
it will,
when.
yeah. Well, when I was a mom, I wanted to prevent them from failing, right? And now it's just like, get out there and try it. If you
Yeah.
fail, it's okay. And so it's a whole, I think grandchildren, and one of these days you'll get to experience that. Alice, like Terry and I do, but it's like, I look at grandparenting is it's your do-over.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's why I love it so much. I'm like, I'm getting to do this whole thing all over again. And I have learned more about me
Oh, yeah.
looking at through the eyes of my grandchildren than I've ever given myself permission to do. So I just
I think that's really interesting, right? Because I think that goes to actually the G of magic, which is grace,
yes,
right?
absolutely.
You having grace for yourself and more grace with them
Yeah,
than you ever would of your own children. Because
absolutely.
you're just wiser.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're just wiser to have
Yeah.
grace for them, but really more importantly, I think for ourselves,
Yeah.
Yes.
we need to have that grace. And I talk about in the book, just I think we've mistaken a lot of things that are grace for ourselves as luxuries, as
Mhm.
opposed to like, no, like this is like getting the oil changed in the car. You wouldn't let your car run bone dry. Every 3,000 miles, you're going getting the oil change. So what are those things as women, as moms, that we can do for ourselves that are oil changes, right? Like for me, that's okay. Am I going to the doctor regularly just to get checked up and getting blood work done and getting a massage and going to the chiropractor and taking vitamins and taking a walk, going and journaling, going and having coffee by myself because I want to.
Yeah.
What if we stop saying that those are luxury items and those are like the equivalent of an oil change and just me having grace with myself?
Yeah.
I love
You know,
that.
I the word that came to mind as you were describing that, I remember a gentleman he was an important part of my world. I worked with him very closely. He said to me one day when I was talking about those things that you just mentioned, he goes, "Man, you're high maintenance."
Mm.
So the whole to be able, and I didn't know how to respond to that because I was just like, I am not high maintenance. This is just what I need to be at my best self, right?
Yeah.
But just even the perception of when we do those kind of things, of how that may be interpreted, I think is important, which is even more reason why we should be giving ourselves the grace.
Yeah. It's reminding ourselves
Yeah,
that we deserve that.
giving
And
ourselves the
we need
permission.
it.
Somebody else says that to us, realizing that's their own baggage.
True.
Yeah.
They're not doing that for themselves, so they're casting judgment on what
Absolutely.
we need to do. Yet there's going to be somebody else that looks at it and says, they gave themselves permission to do that. I wonder what it would be like if I did that for myself too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some of
absolutely.
that is passed on from the way we were brought up. So I don't do things for myself that may seem selfless,
Mm-hmm.
but actually it's selfish to myself.
Mhm.
Right. So, and we didn't do it because we didn't do those things. We didn't spend that money and we didn't, right. So this is a good conversation for a lot of people out there, whether you're
Absolutely.
your mom, dad, male, female.
Yeah.
Giving yourself grace. We could do a whole podcast on just that one, the G.
It's the whole oxygen mask analogy, right? It's
Yeah.
super overused, but it's overused because it's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so
How do
true.
you-
No
I
one
think
else around us is any good if we're not taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that's the answer to how do we give ourselves grace without feeling guilty about it, because it's self-care. It's selfless because we're taking care of others better if we're taking care of ourselves.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
Okay. What about Inquire, Alice? Tell us a little bit more about Inquire. We've got Model, Affirm, Grace, now Inquire.
Yeah. So the whole book, it's funny because the people, I think we pick up parenting books because we think like, oh, I'm going to pick this up and it's going to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, this book isn't going to tell you what to do. It is going to challenge maybe some of the ways that you think. And it's not about knowing any of the answers. It's about becoming more skilled at asking better questions. We don't need to know the answers. And I think that's one of the most freeing parts about parenting, and why you can parent multiple children, that are all, they're so different. Like my 4 girls, like they look like one another. Like you look at them and you're like, oh yeah, they all fell from the same tree, right? But they're so different.
Yeah.
And I don't need to be a different person for them, but I do need to ask different questions for each of them. And that opens up the world, and I don't need to know the answers. So inquire is all about living from a place of curiosity as opposed to judgment.
Yeah,
Love that.
that's good. You're exactly right. Your girls go from one end of the spectrum to the other, not good or bad, not right or wrong. They are all four different humans, and beautiful, and very, you when you were with them, Debbie, I know you got to be a part of that. It was like,
It's a gift to
they're
be
powerful. It's a
around.
gift.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
really is. And it will be so fun. And I know you're excited about this too, but just on the sideline to see the impact that they make in the world.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Oh, it's
because I
already
think because they're
happening.
equipped.
Oh, for sure. And I think all of our kids can be that way. And it doesn't have to wait until some
They're
you know,
doing it now. They're doing it now.
predetermined moment of,
Yes.
oh, well, once they graduate or once,
Yeah.
like,
No.
I think all of our kids have the ability to do it right where they are,
Absolutely.
right here and
Absolutely.
now, if
Yeah.
we create this safe container
Yeah.
for them to be able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well said. And they're making a difference already in the world, in
Oh,
the
yeah.
impact that they have and the
Yes, they
influence.
are.
And yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting to watch.
Okay. So coach,
I think
we're all
that's a
three
big word.
coaches. We're all three coaches. So coach, talk about the C, the coach.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's different roles that we get to play for our children. And I think from 0 to 18, we get to play the role of coach, and coaches have a vested interest in how the game ends up. And sometimes as coaches, we call the play, and sometimes we let them as the player call the play. And I think if we do our job really well, they come back to us when they leave home and ask for our advice as a consultant.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
earn the right to become the consultant by doing a really good job as coach. But I want to shift that for a second and talk to the parent as, who's coaching you, mom? Who's coaching you, dad?
Mhm.
Because there's nothing, there's nothing that says that we have to have this all figured out for our kids. Like I think we all remember, the moment at which we realized our parents were human. like, oh, they didn't really know it all.
Yeah.
And by my kids watching me have a coach, they get to know that really early. Mom doesn't have it all figured out. Mom's still growing.
Yeah.
And so to model having a coach for myself, for them, so that they see this as a normal thing. Like, you don't stop growing just because you graduated from high school.
Absolutely.
You don't stop growing
Absolutely.
just because you now have a career and are married with kids. Like that,
Yeah.
hopefully never stops for them.
Yeah.
Because it's choice.
It reminds me, and I don't know where this came from, and I don't have the exact statistic. I remember somebody asking a question or making some type of statement of the percentage of people once they graduate, and whether it's high school or college, most people are at least having some experience with college, that's the last time that they ever really read a book.
Yes.
And they stop growing. So I love what you said there, is that this is about, are you continuing to grow? Because I don't know how many times I've had people go, when do you go to enough classes? When do you go to enough trainings? When do you read enough books? I mean, they've made fun of me whenever I've moved and they helped me move, and they go, why do you have 150 boxes that just have books in it?
Yes.
And it's because the norm out there, it does not necessarily have a growth mindset, that there's like an ending point. Oh, okay, I graduated from college. I don't need to read anymore. I don't need to grow anymore. I've arrived. And I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes as adults, that we the mindset that we buy into, that our growth is now over.
Yeah.
And when you look at the 6 human needs, like growth is one of our 6 human needs.
It is. We need to. Yeah.
It sure is.
Yeah.
It is. Alyce, I know we're going to wrap up, yet I want to ask you, Debbie and I, there's a couple of questions we were talking about. They were like, yeah, we want to ask that too, right? One of mine, Debbie, I'll let you ask the other one about the co-authors that we talked about.
Yes.
But, you reference a lot about your daughters, because you're a mom, you're a daughter mom, right?
Yeah.
How would you tell somebody, or how would you advise dads or moms that are reading this book, or going to come to a training that you're going to do, or a retreat, or whatever that is? how would you advise them to utilize this material with their sons?
Oh, that's so easy. It's no different, right? Because they're principles, and principles apply no matter what and where. And the reason I geared it towards daughters is obviously because I have 4 daughters,
Sure.
because I tell a lot of girl stories. But some of the feedback that I've gotten, some of the best feedback I've gotten so far is from a divorced dad of a son, right? Because he's like, oh, all of this is applicable. Like at the end of each chapter, there are questions or reflection questions. So the reality is I could have written this and it could have been for any child.
Yeah.
And they're just principles. So that's super easy.
There you
That's
go.
cool.
Because, one of the things that we sat around the table and talked about when we were at your beautiful retreat at your home was, how do you take this and make it applicable? Is it geared towards women? Is it geared towards daughters? No. So I want everybody to hear that. And then
Yeah.
we'll talk about like kind of what the goals are possibly before we get off. So,
Yeah.
okay, Debbie.
Well, here was my question, Alyce, because you had some co-authors in this book and they were your amazing daughters. And I think as a mom and as a grandma, I was reading those and I just went, wow, for them to verbalize and put in writing, right?
Mhm.
It's one thing to say it, it's another thing to put it in writing of what it's been like to be your daughter.
Hmm.
And to see the words that they wrote. I'm just wondering, when you read what they did for the first time,
Yeah.
what was that experience like?
I think like any parent, like if you were to ask your child to write something, there's a little bit of like, whew, how did I do? Right. Because they're the ultimate scorecard, right? Of kind of your life work. And I think it's a great question to pose for listeners as to, hey, what do you want your kids to be able to say about you? Right. And much like we'll talk about, when it's your final breath and they're reading the eulogy at your funeral, what do you want them to say? Same thing about your kids. Okay, what do you want them to say? Because that informs how you live your life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's because I gave that some thought as to, gosh, what do I hope they'd say one day? That created the intention in the parenting. And gosh, when I read it, I was like, wow, you know what? We did all right. We did all right, because we never wanted to teach them what to think. We wanted to teach them how to think. And all of them think very differently. They have different thoughts on they will get into it on different subject matters. But what I look at and marvel at is, oh, but they know how to think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm really proud of, is that they know how to think, because then when you launch them into the world, like they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they know how to think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what are what is your next big project that you're putting out there that people might be able to connect with you or to you, other than the book?
Yeah.
And some of these podcasts that you've been on, what is a way that anybody could connect with you at the next level?
So the first way is go hop on Facebook and join the Magic Mom community. So we'll have conversations on that through that medium, and connect on Instagram, just Alyce Dailey. And then what I'm passionate about are entrepreneurial moms. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you've, got this big business, because it's almost a misnomer, right? Because all moms are entrepreneurs, but having this mindset of like, no, I'm taking risk, I'm taking initiative. And so we're creating these 90-day experiences, these that will include a retreat component at our home. And we're just going to get groups of women together, because one of the things that's lacking is community and friendship amongst us women, that we're all going through the same thing, yet we need to slow down life enough to be able to experience it, and then experience it together. So the Magic Mom experience is what's coming next. And so if you want information on that, just connect via Instagram or the website or Facebook, and we can certainly talk more about that. And then we've also got a course, a self-study course, if you're wanting to go that route. But lots of different entry points to get involved, because what I really care about is just having more conversations around how we raise this next generation of children to be empowered to live full lives. And as parents, how do we know at the end of it, when our time comes, that we can say that we confidently that we lived fully and that we modeled that for them.
Perfect. Beautiful.
Love
I
it.
told you guys this was going to be magical.
Yeah.
And we will definitely make sure that we put the connections to how to get the Magic Mom book and your Facebook community and so forth. And Alyce, thank you. It's been a refreshing conversation. I knew it would be. So glad that we had you here, and just thank you for all that you do, and for the light that you are in the world. Just thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Yeah. Appreciate you. And I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Super cool. Let's close this out.